Good afternoon. Welcome to the December meeting of the Capital Program Oversight Committee. Do we have any public speakers, Mr. Stewart?
No public speakers.
May I have a motion to approve the minutes? Second, any comments or questions? All in favor? Aye. Committee work plan, Mr. Stewart?
There are no changes to the work plan, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. We'll get on with the quarterly report from the MTA Capital Construction Company. Progress review on 2nd Avenue subway. Mr. Neil Parikh.
Before Anil gets to go to the review, I just wanted to just mention something about the 2nd Avenue subway. This is as a follow-up to the September CPOC 2015 meeting. Our team has performed a deep dive review and analysis of the project schedule and risk associated meeting the December 2016 revenue service date. We also gather lessons learned on the system testing and commissioning from the Fulton and number 7 line project. Based on this review and to increase our confidence in meeting our goal to complete phase 1 by December 16, the station finishes system contractors are accelerating some critical work activities that we want to ensure that we'll meet our goals of the December 2016 RSD. In addition, we are working with New York City Transit to streamline the testing and commissioning process as well as the code compliance acceptance process. New York City Transit has assigned dedicated staff to support testing and commissioning activities, and we have also retained a consultant as an additional resource to New York City Transit Code Compliance Division. This will expedite testing and commissioning code compliance acceptance. Anil?
Okay.
It's all yours.
Thank you, Michael. Next slide, please. On project schedule, as Michael stated, MTACC is working with the station finish contractors and systems contractor to accelerate critical work activities to ensure December 2016 revenue service date. The project is on budget. Project progress. At 63rd Street Station, contractor is performing testing and commissioning work for elevators, escalators, HVAC system, and emergency tunnel ventilation fans, and station finishes work. At 72nd Street, 86th Street, and 96th Street Station, the contractors are performing installation of permanent facility power, elevators, escalators, HVAC, emergency tunnel ventilation fans, and station finishes work. The systems contractor is performing installation of track work, signal work, communication work, and traction power work in stations and tunnels. Track work is 67% complete, 14,825 linear feet out of 22,000 linear feet of track is installed. New York City Transit has agreed to provide dedicated personnel to support testing and commissioning activities. 96th Street Station, contractor has started permanent street restoration work. 90-day look ahead. To complete the testing and commissioning activities for mechanical and electrical systems, and energization of permanent power at 96th Street and 72nd Street stations. Next slide, please. Actual dollar spent is less than 2009 planned expenditure. This is due to the favorable construction bid received from the construction contract. The estimated completion is at $4.372 billion. Next slide, please. The project contingency in 2009 was $322 million. The current project contingency is $137 million, which is $20 million less than the last reported contingency of $157 million. This reduction in contingency is due to the approved and pending negotiated additional work orders. Next slide, please. These are the project critical milestones that will be completed in order to achieve the revenue service date of December 2016. In the first 4 months of 2016, permanent power at all 3 stations will be completed. In the second quarter, ancillary structures, station equipment installation will be completed and will start the local testing of the systems. In the third quarter, the completion of the traction power, tunnel ventilation system, and communication systems will be completed. In the fourth quarter, the train operators training and pre-revenue testing will be completed. Next slide, please. The critical milestone issues in the first quarters are permanent power energization. The permanent power at 96th Street Station is scheduled to be energized by January 4th, 2016. The permanent power at 72nd Street Station is scheduled to be energized by end of March 2016, and the permanent power at 86th Street Station is scheduled to be energized by end of April 2016. The mitigation has been implemented and contractors are working extended hours and on weekends to achieve the completion date for the facility power. Next slide, please. The critical issues in the second quarters are completion of the ancillary 1 and ancillary 2 structures, mechanical, electrical, and power work at 86th Street Station. Completion and installation of escalators at 86th Street Station, completion of the signal and track work. Again, the mitigation is that contractors are working extended hours and on weekends to ensure the completion of this critical work. Next slide, please. The critical issues in the third quarters are energization of the traction power at all 3 stations, installation and testing of the emergency tunnel ventilation fans at 72nd Street Station, completion of the communication systems critical to the revenue service such as fire alarm, police radio, PACIS, and completion of the escalators and elevators at 72nd Street Stations. The mitigation is to have the contractor work on extended work hours and on the weekends. We will monitor the progress on a weekly basis and establish intermediate milestone to ensure timely completions. In the fourth quarter, the critical issues are testing and commissioning of the elevators at 96th Street Station. The mitigation is to have the contractor add additional crew to work on both elevators at the same time. The second issue is the completion of the train operators training and pre-revenue testing activities. The mitigation is to work with New York City Transit to assure timely resources to complete the required testing and training. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Independent Engineer, Ken Haggis.
Good afternoon. In our quarterly report to the committee, let me start with the schedule. The project schedule carries a moderate risk of delay to completion in December 2016. However, the project team has obtained high-level commitments from its contractors that support the December revenue service date. The IEC has observed several key activities are now currently behind schedule, including the provision of power at 86th Street, the construction of entrances at 72nd Street, installation of communication and traction power equipment, and the track installation, now at 72nd Street. In our view, the project team should expedite their effort to develop a revised project schedule in time to fully address the impacts of these delays. Turning to the budget, we find the project is on budget. Cost contingency remains in line with the amount of work remaining. Our analysis shows that the project's construction expenditures should need to increase to an average rate of $42 million a month from their current recent rolling average of $37 a month to support the schedule to complete by December 2016. In looking at the risk, our ongoing risk assessment has identified the top challenges to the December date. These include design and scope changes during the remaining construction, testing and commissioning of the fire alarm system, staff availability caused by the concurrent completion of 3 new stations within a couple months of each other, installation of power and communications, completion of the water mist. We note the project team is actively implementing mitigations to address these risks in order to complete the project by December 2016.
Any comments or questions either of the project management staff or of Kent? on Second Avenue. Susan?
I appreciate all the promises that we have from the contractors. I appreciate your encouragement to us that we're going to get there. I think we need that more granular milestone as soon as possible, because the red dot on 86th Street is the beginning of a domino. And if that isn't met, we're only going to go into a deeper hole. With that in mind, and I have some specific questions too, but with that in mind, may I ask that we have an update at our next meeting rather than waiting on this? And at that meeting, I'm expecting that we'll see some real progress on the change of colors and the increased commitment and timeline and things of that nature.
We are developing right now let's call it a micro schedule that we're looking at the various components, and we are actually scheduling and providing for ourselves and our contractors mini milestones that have to be met in order for us to be able to achieve the various dates. So we are in the process of developing it. It's a very it's a task that we are undertaking right now. We're working with the contractors for them to be able to also look at that. So we'll both be in accord that these are the milestones that they have to meet. We're looking at incentive and disincentive of meeting these dates in order to encourage the contractors to actually get there. And we will be providing you with additional information on a monthly basis.
Thank you. A couple of specific nitpicking points. Michael, you've said twice that we have embedded transit people into the project so that we can make a transition. As we all know, that transition to operations can be a sticky point for us. So the embedding is a really good idea, and I'm glad that you're going ahead with it. Will you need additional personnel? Because the wording in the slide said has agreed to provide. So
We at this point are actually building out, it will take about a month to do that. Just on Second Avenue, we actually have a store that was a contractor office, and we're putting there 30 people, all from transit. We also have additional, this is at 84th Street and Second Avenue, and we also have an office at 94th that, again, we're going to augment it with additional people as necessary. So not only they are embedded, but they're on the project, okay? So they don't need to schedule in advance, they are there.
Okay.
So that is going to help.
Embedded and embedded.
Yes, yes.
If I can just add, also various department from CPM and Transit have agreed, even though they're going to be located here on Second Avenue, they will provide support that is necessary to get the code compliance work completed, and all the if there is any technical challenges associated with it, they will come and help us immediately, versus without wasting more time.
Just so you know, I'm having every 2 weeks a meeting with everyone from Transit and our people to make sure that we're on the same page. This is not a waiting game, and we are meeting with the contractors weekly to monitor their progress.
I'm glad to hear all of that. I think that might help to get us where we need to go. Last question. I'm confused about something. Kent made the point that there might be a staff problem with trying to concurrently complete 3 stations. Are we doing that in-house?
No, we are actually, we're doing the acceptance in-house, and I think that, I don't want to speak for Ken, but I think he meant New York City Transit. Am I correct? As well as our construction management team that is provided to us via a consultant that is Parson Brinkerhoff, that they have made a commitment as well to increase their staff, whatever amount of people is needed. So that's, I do not foresee that to be an issue.
Yes, I think that I'm glad to hear you say that there's a comprehensive plan that includes the contractors, transit, and your own staff and the CM staff to get this thing done. I think it's important that we recognize that testing and commissioning 3 entirely new stations at once is a heavy lift. And I know you're working to, plan that out so that it minimizes as best as possible, and get the people and the resources to do what is an extraordinary thing.
Susan, one additional thing to mention, that our consultant, Parsons Brinkerhoff, I met with them last Thursday, and they're bringing in for the period of 1 year a new manager. You may recognize the name, Larry Reuter, that used to be the president of New York City Transit, and he will be running on our side the process of the CM.
Thank you. That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Pally?
In relation to all of the items that are still to be done, and there are 10 to 12 of them in that regard, are there any of them that do not directly relate to a safe operation of the system, in that could the system be operated safely for revenue service without the completion of all of those items?
I believe that the items that you have seen are necessary. However, we're going to, let's call it a triage, in which we're looking, first of all, what's necessary to start the training.
Right.
And what can be done between that time and the start of the revenue service. But to give you an example, that is not necessarily something that we would want to have, but if the cladding on one of the buildings is not completed, that will not stop revenue service. I'm talking about, we have ancillary buildings. If everything works there and just the cladding needs to be put on, that should not be an impediment to revenue service. We don't expect that to be the case, but I just give it as an example.
Okay, so that therefore there I'll use that word appropriately, may be some cosmetic, is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Activities that could occur after the operation of revenue service within a reasonable period of time afterward, which do not affect the safe operation of the system itself.
That's correct, although I would not want to go there.
I understand.
Our aim is to complete it by December 2016.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the recommendation to have this reported on monthly at CPOC is a good one. We'll do that. The governor's been very clear that we're already out there with a number of people concerned about the level of commitment we have for Phase 2 of 2nd Avenue. And that is one of the hurdles we have to overcome in order to get CPRB approval. So we have to deliver Phase 1 by December 31st. And there are those that have suggested a Christmas present wouldn't be bad either. So we will pay close attention to it. Okay, we'll move on to East Side Access and Project Management Staff. Mr. Goodrich.
Good afternoon. On East Side Access, overall the project is still on the same schedule and the overall budget. As far as progress since we last reported, we've achieved substantial completion on 2 contracts. The first one is in Herald. Herald Structures Part 2A, the CH-54A contract. We achieved substantial completion November 25th. And the 55th Street Vent Plant Facility in Manhattan, we achieved substantial completion on November 20th. We've had good progress on 3 of the other contracts noted here on this slide. I wanted to mention the north back of house on the Manhattan North Structures contract. CMO 06 is progressing well in the cavern, and also the work at the Bellmouth in Queens on CQ 32, which was related to a developer site adjacent to it, as well as the above-grade structures at the Plaza Interlocking. Both have been proceeding well. In terms of procurement, we've received cost proposals on the CMO 07 contract, so that procurement is advancing. On the midday storage yard, we're expecting to award the advanced procurement of signal huts, CILs, by the end of this year on that contract. As far as the 90-day look ahead, we're expecting to achieve substantial completion on 4 contracts next quarter. There'll be 2 in Manhattan and 2 in Herald. We're looking to advertise another Herald contract. the Tunnel A construction. That's the approach to Tunnel A. And we expect to come back to the board in January with a recommendation for award on the CMO 07 contract. And that's subject to the identification of funding for that. In terms of cost and schedule performance, cost expenditures overall are about 98.4% of plan, and third-party construction is 96.9% of plan. In terms of cost and schedule contingency, we're maintaining the same contingency at 22 months. But as you know, we've been impacted in Herald by various items resulting in delays. We're currently evaluating the impacts of those delays and developing a mitigation plan to reduce the impact. In the March CPOC, I expect to be reporting back on the results of that schedule evaluation. Our budget contingency increased by $7 million from the last report, and we are at 85% versus a plan of 82%. This slight increase is due primarily to the favorable bids on the CH-57 Herald Structures Part 3 contract. The first critical issue, which is one we've been discussing, is on the Manhattan North Structures contract. It's the milestone 2 to complete the lower tunnels in Manhattan. This now has slipped to May 2016 as the current forecast. We discussed last time the robotic application of concrete and the anticipated increase in production. However, we have not realized the increase in the results of that and the expected recovery in the schedule. We're still using that as one of several means of application of concrete, but we still have some schedule delay there. As a result of this, we are evaluating the potential of revising the access dates for the follow-on contract CMO 07. In terms of design completion, this is the contractor's design for various systems on the project-wide facility systems contract, CS-179. The systems contractor design is now forecast to be complete in September this coming year. We're continuing to work closely with the contractor and Long Island Railroad to expedite approval of the system design elements. I fully expect this will remain on the agenda for this committee until at least September of next year. Any residual delay that remains at the conclusion of design will be mitigated during construction by means such as multiple shifts or additional installation crews for the various systems. This one we're reporting a green status. Funding has been identified for options 6, 7, and a portion of 2 on this CS-179 contract, and these options have now been exercised, so we now consider this item closed. This is the procurement I spoke about earlier for the terminal, the CMO 07 contract. We are in the negotiations phase of this procurement with multiple teams, and we expect to bring a recommendation for award to the January board meeting, and the award subject to identification of funding. This is the H3 Signal Hut CIL. This was successfully cut over and placed into service on November 16th. This was a successful team effort by Long Island Railroad Signal Department and the ESA Herald team. I wanted to offer my congratulations and thanks to each and every member of that team to make this happen on time. So this is also considered closed. The CH-57A contract, that's the construction of the westbound bypass in Herald. The critical activity we're monitoring here is the mining of the westbound bypass tunnel. This has now been delayed until January. November was the date in the previous report when we met in September. There remain 7 secant piles which are critical to the construction of the east approach that affect the start of excavation for the tunnel shield. And this item is the overall Amtrak resources required for all of the Herald interlocking work, all of our contracts, as well as force account work. We are in regular communication with Amtrak on the track outages and the overall level of resources needed to support our construction schedule throughout the interlocking. We fully understand the challenges Amtrak is facing to provide adequate resources in support of not only our project, but all the projects in the Northeast Corridor. They've got a number of critical projects, which I'm sure you're aware of. The hardening of the East River tunnels, which is occurring now in advance of the Superstorm Sandy tunnel work, and all of the work they have in the West End development overbuild. As a result of this, we've informed Amtrak management that we plan to reduce their force account workload by transferring some of the direct work to third-party contractors. We are in the process of implementing this as one of the measures to mitigate the schedule delays. This concludes my report.
Give the report on the IEC.
Good afternoon. The East Side Access budget remains at $10.178 billion with a contingency increase of $7 million given a favorable bid in Harold. The revenue service date is December 2022, and that includes 22 months of unallocated contingency. The completion of Harold interlocking work stays off the project critical path by 1 month. The IEC notes the following concerns for the Manhattan North Structures contract CMO6. You heard the project say that at this time the contractor has fallen behind the recovery schedule and will not meet milestone number 2. The completion of milestone number 2 will provide access for the follow-on cavern finish-out contract CMO7 through the lower level tunnels, which will then become project critical path. The IEC projects milestone 2 completion no earlier than June 2016. The IEC notes the following concerns for the Facilities Systems Package 1 CS-179 schedule. The resource-loaded contractor baseline schedule has not been incorporated into the Integrated Project Schedule, the IPS, and interim system design milestones are not being met. The IEC has identified unattainable resource peaks, unrealistic durations for installation work and local testing, and schedule logic issues in the contractor's schedule. These issues need to be corrected and the remaining risk addressed in order to maintain the integrated systems testing completion date. The IEC notes the following concerns for Harold. Delays to the remaining signal hut cutovers may push out Harold infrastructure improvements and civil structural work required for revenue service. Low contractor productivity combined with inconsistent Amtrak support could lead to further erosion of the float between Harold and the project critical path, which currently is through Manhattan and Systems. With the Facilities Systems Package 1 CS-179 contract not yet incorporated into the IPS, and with Harold work off the project critical path by only 1 month, the IEC recommends MTACC revise the integrated project schedule to include the recently accepted resource-loaded contractor schedules and the impact of Harold interlocking delays. This will allow the project team to maintain stringent project controls and the IEC to accurately monitor progress. Thank you.
Any comments or questions of either the project management team or the IEC? Mr. Ferrer?
Mr. Chairman, the IEC, which advises the board, seems to be at clear variance with what our expectations are from MTA-CC. Is there a response to that?
It's the critical path issue at Harold?
Yeah.
We have yet to determine exactly the critical path. We know that Harold has its risks. We are evaluating that, and we expect to come back. At this point, I do not see a great difference between what we're looking at and what the IEC. So they are mentioning that actually we have said we're going to be done in May, particularly on one particular issue on the north tunnels, that they said June, and that's something that, we are looking to see if, in fact, there is a need for an additional correction. But I've not seen a great disparity between what Bill presented and the IEC.
Mr. Stumbo, did you want to respond?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Pally, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add I think the IEC was indicating that Harold interlocking is off the project critical path by about 1 month, and we're not in disagreement with that. It's not the critical path currently. It's very close to the critical path. We got a number of items that we're reviewing. It's going to take a few months to do a proper review and come up with a mitigation plan that we'd have confidence in that we could then incorporate into the schedule. So,
And the cooperation from Amtrak?
We've got a good high level of cooperation from Amtrak management. We're in constant communication with them. They understand our need. If they had unlimited resources, I think they wouldn't have any trouble supporting us. But the reality is they have a very limited pool of critical resources, such as ET, electric traction forces, and that's been an ongoing problem for a period of time. To their credit, they have an extensive trainee program ongoing right now. We tend to, whatever crews we receive, we get an equivalent number of trainees provided as well. So we actually have a workforce that's probably almost twice as large that we expected, but because they're trainees, they're not necessarily qualified to do the same work. So in years to come, as they become fully trained and certified, I think we'll see the benefit of that, but it's more of a long-term solution.
Does this concern you? And I'm asking the question honestly. Does this concern?
Yeah, we have a concern because a lot of these people that are being trained by Amtrak, after a relatively short period of time, they leave and go to other companies that pay them better. But I just wanted to address one thing that is important. Normally, we do a lot of work in the weekends, and the weekends are very important for us. And there are 40 weekends that work can be done and during the year. And for the 2016, Amtrak has, in effect, given us committed 25% of their weekends to us. And we have the ability, to the extent possible, to piggyback on other things. So from their perspective, they've really made an effort to increase the amount of time and resources to us. We can absorb probably all 40 weekends given, but that's not the way things normally happen.
Mr. Pally?
I have two concerns, Commissioner Ferrer, obviously related to the Amtrak situation, and I think that is of grave concern because in the end, notwithstanding the level of cooperation, this is not an Amtrak project. Whether it happens in 2022 or 2032 to Amtrak is irrelevant. It's very relevant to us, but it's irrelevant to them. And our reliance on their goodwill, which is basically what we have at the moment, is frightening in a project of this duration and of this importance to all of us. And it's not anybody's fault, it just is. And we're gonna have to figure out a way of, at some point, either telling Amtrak, we're gonna do all their work, or we're gonna find third parties to do all their work, because we can no longer allow them to delay other things that we have to do. To many of us, 2022 is tomorrow. I understand it's not December 31st, 2016, like Second Avenue, but on a project of this size and scope, 2022 is tomorrow. And unless we can figure out a way to accomplish that with Amtrak, we're going to be left holding the bag, and they're going to be sitting there doing whatever Amtrak does in that regard. That's issue one. The second issue is you made two pronouncements in the report relating to projects that are to be funded by the next capital plan, for which there is now no authority to fund in the next capital plan. And we had a conversation, obviously, with the chief financial officer about some of those issues. So the question is, what happens if we can't find the appropriate funds to make that happen in January or February? What does that do to our schedule?
Not meaning to pick on words, it's the current capital plan, but it's the next one to be
The next
approved.
capital plan, right.
Okay.
Well,
We
to me, the current is 15 to 19.
Well,
You know,
what they're talking about with respect to the awards here are either in monies already available for 10 through 14 or monies to be made available in 15 through 19. In advance of a capital program review board approval, and we have to make that award, we're prioritizing the projects under which we would use the $1.8 billion that Mr. Fran talked about earlier, and use that pay-as-you-go capital to make those awards. They're being somewhat kind in the sense that that formal decision hasn't been made yet, but there's a high likelihood that that project needs to go forward. But there's still some dialogue with some principals with respect to that. I have a summary comment on this, but Mr. Neal, please.
Yes, I have a newfound appreciation for how gargantuan was the word I used earlier, East Side Access is, after the trip we had a few weeks ago. But I want to come back to some language you guys used, because these kind of adjectives and new nouns cause me to ask a question. Can you, back to page, what is this, 36, unattainable, unrealistic, and then a new euphemistic phrase I haven't heard before, logic issues. Can you just give me a sense of how dramatic those words are? They sound kind of dramatic to me. In a world where we try to be gentle, can you please give some color to those words? Because they make me pique my interest.
So with unattainable resource peaks has to do with work being performed at the same location with the same type of work resources. If you bundle these together, you have peaks of specialists that are required to do the same type of work. And given our experience, these resource peaks are unattainable, meaning that in contrast, they would need to be spread out as not to have these peaks. Given unrealistic durations for installation work is the amount of time it takes to perform this work in the scheduled time is simply unrealistic. And as for testing and schedule logic issues, the schedule as it is currently laid out in this contract has issues of logic, meaning there's certain activities that are outlined to overlap at this time, and in our opinion, these activities cannot overlap. I hope this answers your question.
I'd like to provide some summary comments. To say that this project, it's the largest public works project, not only here, but in the United States right now, is a high profile, a highly visible project is an understatement. To say that it's got a project budget and schedule vastly different than the one that was first publicized when the project began when I was at Long Island Railroad almost 20 years ago now, is an understatement. In a parallel part of this same galaxy, there are discussions going on about two things that we don't discuss here. There is 10 pounds of grain in a 5-pound bag to deliver service on a daily basis at Penn Station from Harold Interlocking Inn. There's 15 pounds of grain in a 5-pound bag for the capital project work being done. In addition to East Side Access, we're on the verge of a launch of Gateway, and there will be a tremendous amount of pressure to accelerate Gateway because the two under-river tubes in the North River are at even greater risk than the East River tubes. We have a significant amount, or Amtrak does, of Sandy resilient repair work to be done in the East River tubes. So the independent engineer's job is reporting to the board as an extension of the board to report things as clear as they see them, even if they're stark, and I endorse that. It stimulates a dialogue that we have here as well as other dialogues. They are not part of all the other discussions that are going on. The advantage, the disadvantage is this project is not going to be in fruition until 2022. The advantage is it's not, we have some time. But within the current way of looking at things, we have not exhausted all means to get some of this work done. The issue of going to fast track and closing down lines to get work done was something we never anticipated doing as recently as 5 or 10 years ago. The issue of longer out-of-phase closures to get critical station work is something that we never anticipated. If we need to get to a point collectively to get all 3 of these priority projects done, there is unanimity in commitment from not only the MTA, New York State as well, but Amtrak and NJ Transit to do what's needed to be done to get all 3 of these critical projects done. So I think in the context of the reports we have on these, I do not want to sanitize. I want people to call things as they see them, but there are a lot of options still available to us with respect to how we will go about getting this work done, because this project has to get completed by the date. Gateway needs to get started and underway, and the East River Tube work, which will be very impactful. And it also impacts, believe it or not, the Canarsie Tube work for the Transit Authority, because we ideally don't want both of those impacted at the same time. That's going to be a very difficult issue to address. So we will, and this is one that I think quarterly we meet on these. Yes. Maybe we can meet these quarterly, but in like what you suggested on Second Avenue, Susan, maybe this is one that we could report on mini-wise more frequently, especially we're in this difficult time right now with Harold. Okay? Thank you. Next report is Cortlandt Street, Mr. Uday.
Good afternoon. In terms of the schedule, the project is planned to be substantially complete in August of 2018. The cost, the current budget is $158.4 million, which excludes the risk reserve. In terms of progress, we have completed 100 linear feet of the southbound track work, including the new welded rails. We have completed 100 linear feet of the northbound track. I'm sorry. No, she's got it. Well, yeah, we have a copy of the book. Yes. All right. Let me start again. In terms of the schedule, the substantial completion is for August 2018. The current budget is 158.4 million, which excludes the risk reserve. In terms of progress, we have completed 200 linear feet of the southbound track. We also completed 1,200 feet of the northbound track. We have completed relocation of the third rail, 24 linear feet of southbound and northbound tracks. We have completed waterproofing of the structure inward, removed and relocated 80% of the temporary shielding. We started constructing the southbound platform edge, and we started demolition of the platform walls, manholes, and fan plants. In terms of 90-day look ahead, we continue to do demolition of the southbound and northbound platforms and slabs, POM and 4 platform slabs, complete design of the northern access and bulletin number 1 for the issuance of the contractor, continue demolition of the walls for fan plant ductwork, and prepare a coordination drawing for HVAC, communication electrical ducts, and conduits, and also plan for the 2016 GOs. Next slide, please. Oh. In terms of the performance of cost and schedule, I think we are on track in terms of the total project cost. The actual is in line with the plan. Same thing with third-party construction. The actual is also in line with the plan. In terms of the cost and schedule contingency status, the schedule continues 181 days. We have 6 months afloat. We have not used anything yet. In terms of the budget contingency is 5.6 million. The current contingency is 5.2 million. The decrease is due to negotiate 4 change orders from 5.6 to 5.2. We have an additional 10.9 million of the project budget for unallocated known anticipated change orders, and we also have an unmitigated risk reserve of 16.9 million. In terms of critical milestones and issues, the one we're tracking heavily is the demolition of the existing path station north temporary access by the Port Authority. The issue here is an ongoing delay by the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey to demolish the path station northern temporary access, which has been delayed by 3 months later than last reported. The impact is delay in demolition by the Port Authority will delay construction of the northern entrance, stair and elevator, which in turn may delay opening the station. Mitigation, we continue to meet the Port Authority to press upon them the need for the northern entrance. We're also reviewing alternatives going forward. The next critical milestone is completing the design of the northern street entrance, the stair and elevator. Delays in completing the design of the northern street entrance, stair and elevator may impact the issuance of the construction change order and construction of the northern end. Impact completion of the design, originally set for October, has been delayed due to structural obstructions and communication system to be incorporated in the final design. This will also delay issuing and negotiating the change order. At this time, the delay has no immediate impact due to Port Authority delays in deconstructing of the northern entrance. We will continue to manage the design for completion by January 2016. The next critical milestone issue is the issuing the change order for the northern street entrance, stair and elevator. Delay in issue the change order and negotiation for the northern street entrance, stair and elevator may impact the start of construction. Impact, issuing the change order originally set for December 2015 has been delayed due to delays in final design. May potentially impact the elevator and conduit installation. The mitigation is we're initiating a 2-part change order to mitigate potential delays. Part 1 will begin preparation of the shop drawings, while Part 2 is still in negotiations. The next one is the completing all the right-of-way work. This is no more an issue. This has been mitigated. GOs, the issue was GOs will not be available after June 2016 to perform the right-of-way work. The delay in completing all right-of-way by June 2016 will impact the completion of the project due to unavailability of general orders after June 2016. Track work is currently 95% complete. All remaining right-of-way work will need to be completed 2016. Project will continue to monitor this progress. The risk assessment results, the scheduled results from the risk assessment indicate a potential project duration of 46 months at the 80th percentile confidence level. The project team has identified mitigation strategies that will reduce this to 43 months. Cost exposure is primarily driven by potential of experiencing scheduling delays. Major risks include challenging site access, coordination with the Port Authority, dependence upon the availability of track outages and work trains, and potential delays associated with integrated system testing. A more detailed summary of the risk analysis and result has been included with this CPOC report. That concludes my report.
IEC report, Mr. Patrick Askew.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As far as schedule review, the IEC notes the following schedule impacts. Coordination between the Port Authority and MTACC is a key concern and needs improvement. The Port Authority must demolish the north temporary access to the PATH station before the Cortlandt Street Station north entrance can be constructed. Design, procurement, and execution of the north entrance change orders and other key scope changes to the project have slipped by 30 days. These items are now anticipated to be complete in January of 2016. Station right-of-way work is progressing well. Northbound and southbound track work is 95% complete. As far as budget, the IEC concurs with the current project budget of $158.4 million. The IEC concurs that the project contingency has been reduced to $5.2 million. The results of the June 2015 risk assessment indicates a need for additional project funding due to potential unmitigated risk. The amount of the additional funding will become more certain upon negotiation and reconciling of key change orders by January 2016. The IEC's concerns and issues. Contingency and budget. The IEC believes that the current budgeted contingency of $5.2 million is not adequate amount to support the construction budget of $101.1 million with the project's current risk profile. As far as logistics, the logistical challenges such as laydown area, site access, and complexities of the site could pose additional costs and schedule risk to the budget and completion date for the project. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Mr. Albert, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a couple of points on this. In several of the slides, it refers to the northern street entrance, and it uses a capital N, which makes it look like that's the actual name of the street. It would be much better if we could give the actual name of the street on those presentations. The other one is, due to this construction, number 1 trains are really creeping through what will be Cortlandt Street, and I'm wondering if the schedule has been adjusted on the number 1 line to accommodate that. Utilizing the old South Ferry Station, we already have a bottleneck, but having trains creep through what will be Cortlandt Street exacerbates this situation further.
When would you happen to know one way or the other? Or?
Yeah, during part of the construction, particularly when the track was chipped out, skeletonized, we had to adjust the schedule. Moving the area to 5 miles per hour. As indicated in the report, that work has been completed, confirmed, and so we should be going through there at a faster pace. Certainly, the station will adjust the schedule. Today, it was creeping through there, so.
Take a look at it.
Can I just ask a little more detail on, I mean, there are obviously issues with the Port Authority, like what exactly those are, what the holdups are?
At the north end, we need to actually provide for an ADA elevator entrance. At this point, the northern end is also utilized by the Port Authority as access to PATH. And they have not started the demolition. We have had discussion, I had actually discussion as far as 2 days ago, no, before the weekend, on Friday, with Pat Foy to understand, and he said he will get back to us with a more precise schedule. At this point, they are later in demolishing that particular site that will allow us to start actually the construction of the north end elevator.
But I guess the question, so it sounds like we were hoping they would do this a few months ago, and now they're not. Is there something they need to have in hand or have ready before they can do the demolition? Is that
Isn't this tied to the opening of the Calatrava station?
Yes, the Calatrava.
Calatrava.
Yeah, in order to open, right now, that particular area is utilized by the passengers, by the customers of PATH to come through there. They're coming through Vesey Street, right?
right?
And they're utilizing that. In order for them to demolish it, they will have to have an alternative way of getting in there that appears not to be in place right now.
There are some other exits but not for the mass of people. Most people use the Vesey Street exit. Has anybody taken a look at the station to see how far along they are on the rest of it? Because when you look
I
through the
cannot tell you.
curtains,
I
it looks
I
like
don't
it
know.
is.
They need to demolish, they need to move the people from the temporary part terminal back into the Calatrava through the Day Street concourse. That's the plan, that eventually will get people off the street and into the underpass. In terms of the entrance itself, there are two entrances that will allow, that will decongest that place as they go further by mid of 2016, like Liberty and VC.
Well, are the new exits ready yet?
Well-
Or is that, do we have to wait for that construction before we get the demolition?
No, for demolition to be completed, they need to move the people into the existing, to the new path, into the underpass of the concourse. Once they do that, we'll be able to, they'll start deconstructing the northern entrance.
I realize that. I use that station every time I come here. Is the new station that they have to move the people to ready? Because it's got barriers now I can't see through.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's complete. I think their plan is to finish by mid of 2016. The plan is to finish by mid of 2016. I mean, that's what I presume is their plan, that they won't be done until 2016, mid of 2016.
Doesn't that put our schedule a little bit off
Yes, it
kilter?
does.
It does.
Yes, it does.
Well, then let's try to figure out what our schedule
Well,
might
that's
be.
why I've had a conversation with Pat Foy, and he is committed to get back to me this week to let me know what they can do. He's totally aware of it.
Any further comments or questions? If not, we'll move on. Craig Stewart, the capital program status.
The commitment and completion performance highlights for November start on page 56 of your director's book. Commitments, MTA agencies plan to commit a total of $3.1 billion in 2015 from approved capital programs, including 34 major commitments. To date, agencies planned 32 major commitments, 19 were committed, but 13 are delayed. A total of $2.5 billion was committed through November versus $2.9 billion year-to-date goal. By year-end, the MTA forecasts 92%, making 92% of its $3.1 billion commitment goal. Completions, the MTA plans a total of $2.6 billion in project completions in 2015, including 25 major completions. To date, agencies plan 20 major completions. 14 have been completed, while 6 others are delayed. The MTA completed $1.6 billion worth of $6 billion versus a $2.1 billion year-to-date goal. By year-end, the MTA forecasts meeting 83% of its $2.6 billion completion goal. Traffic light reports, 2 of them can be found on page 69 for the core program report, and page 98 for the capital Sandy report. And your quarterly change order report can be found on page 109, submitted for information only. Thank you. Any questions?
Any comments or questions on those reports? Hearing none, that concludes the business. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.